Get the YouTube link. All right, share it on Blue Sky. Share it on Twitter. And share it on Facebook.
And we're live on YouTube now. Okay. Open that.
All right. All right. Welcome to the Basic Income Show. I'm your host, Scott Santens, and my co-hosts here are Conrad Shaw and Josh Worth. And this is the show where we talk about the most recent developments around the world in the world of universal basic income. So, first off, this week, actually very big news that just happened, which was that Thailand announced that they're going to implement a negative income tax in 2027. So that would make Thailand the first country in the world to guarantee a basic income. We don't know many of the details yet.
We should for the people who are like, what's a negative income tax and what's a basic income? There's a lot of people who, like, when you talk about basic income, they're like, negative income tax is better. And that's essentially, if you really understand, like, they fall under the same umbrella and they can be designed to have the exact same theoretical money flows. And it's just that UBI is a more specific, like, order of operations to accomplish it and be much more efficient. So UBI and negative income tax are often and can be like the very same thing. It's just different understandings of how to do it. And a lot of times when people say negative income tax is better, it's because they don't understand UBI all the way or the same way, and because they don't understand the realities of like doing targeted welfare in practice. So they think it's just as good to find the people who need the money and give them extra credit.
So do I have this straight? If UBI is fully funded by tax dollars, a negative income tax is identical, right?
Okay, so the universal basic income provides money to everyone, and then it's paired with some kind of tax reform. And negative income tax has a phase-out mechanism. So, like in this case, let's use Thailand numbers. And so these aren't for sure, but this will help explain this too. So they're talking about setting the threshold at 60,000 baht is their dollars. And 60,000 baht is basically about the 40th percentile. So if you are, if you have $0 in income, so if you file your taxes and you report $0 in income, and the threshold is 60,000 baht, and the phase out, the tax rate is 50%, then you would receive 50% of the difference between 0 and 60,000. So that would be 30,000 baht that you would get. And then if your income were 20,000, then the difference between the 20,000 60,000 is 40,000, and so then you would get 20,000. So everyone below that threshold is boosted according to what their income is, and they're always better off earning an additional dollar because they're always going to keep half of that additional dollar. So unlike with a traditional minimum income guarantee, which is kind of common around the world, where they would essentially just lift you up to a line, and you're not actually better off because you're losing essentially 100% of your earnings. It doesn't make any sense. But then with a negative income tax, you actually do maintain that incentive to work. And the difference, like, it's good that they'll essentially be boosting the bottom 40%. And like the 60,000 threshold, that's fine. Depending on what the amount is and what the rate ends up being, it looks like they could actually eliminate up to like 90% of their poverty in Thailand. Again, depending on what they choose for the numbers. But the difference between like a negative income tax like that, which is boosting the bottom 40% of the population, is that like a UBI could boost 60%, 80% or something of the population. And then you could adjust the marginal tax rate to be much lower. So like a 50% marginal tax rate is still kind of high, I would say, but just for simplistic purposes, that's kind of what's usually said.
It's disincentivizing more. I mean, you can play with all of these numbers and figures in the design of a negative income tax or a UBI. And one of the things about a UBI is instead of sort of looking at people's tax situation and saying, okay, this is how much extra we should give them based on their income, it says we're gonna give everyone the same amount up front, so they're not like waiting and figuring out and whatever, and then use the tax system to claw back what they didn't need or like what they shouldn't have. So it's basically the people left waiting for the money back is the government rather than the people who are like waiting for help. And the government can afford to wait a little to get their money back. So in practice, like a targeted program, which negative income tax is a little more targeted because you first have to determine who should get what rather than just giving everybody the same thing.
Yeah.
Means you miss people, you make mistakes, it takes longer, people are kind of like going through more bureaucracy, it becomes more expensive and inefficient. I mean, a negative income tax, I don't want to shit on this news because it's huge. So, and I think it could be easily shifted in like if into a UBI. But there are losses in the system of a negative income tax that can leave people out or cost extra money.
Yeah, it's a good point to make too about how negative income tax requires that information first. Like, so this is it will require people to file their taxes, which is not an unusual ask. But the fact is so they have a population of 67 million. Right now, 10 million are in the tax system, about 50% of the population. And only about 4 million pay any real taxes, which is about 6% of the population. So part of them doing this is that they actually will get more people into the tax system. So in their case, I think that part of the way they'll be able to help fund like this program even is that they'll be getting a lot more in taxes. Like they'll be finding more people who traditionally aren't filing taxes because now you actually there's a reason to file taxes that you could potentially get a boost. So like that's a good thing that they're doing, but also they can't actually provide any money until everyone has already filed their taxes. So UBI would be just right up front. You just say, look, we're implementing this, and then boom, like poverty is eradicated. And then a year goes by, and then you figure out what people's earnings were and stuff, and then you tax accordingly. Right. So yeah, that's the big difference.
So if you're entitled to a negative income tax bump, but you've got to wait like 9 months until it hits, you could be in a lot of trouble for those 9 months rather than the government kind of waiting. And that's kind of like, there's some sort of blend of this going on with what we have to do with commingle. We don't have the luxury of like being a federal institution that can like mint money and then tax it back. Like we have to sort of like we have more of a cash flow issue. So we're more of a blend. We're sort of in between the two. But one thing that's like Scott just said that's really important about both of these systems in terms of like more conservative arguments often and or more just like logistical practical arguments is it's a real incentive for people to like plug into the system. Like if like do like go through the immigration process the right way because it like gets you into the system or go through filing your taxes and everything like because it's not just it doesn't just feel like a potential penalty. It's like it's a way to plug into the social support net really efficiently. And so if we get everyone set up with a a federal bank account that's non-commercialized, now everyone we have an easy way to get them money. And if we get everyone set up with, tax filing, even if they have no income, then it's an easy way to like automatically, get people what they need and then take back what they didn't. So yeah, like plugging into these like part of the shortfalls of all of our programs are like all of the people who are not actively engaged in it. They're like, yeah, I'm sort of off the grid under the radar. And, it's harder for the government to hurt them in some ways, but it's harder for the government to help them in some ways when they should be entitled. So like, yeah, putting these systems in place up front would actually help a lot in streamlining all of our stuff.
Yeah, I think it'll really be helpful for them in Thailand to actually be able to help additionally too. Like if you have everyone on file, and we've discussed this actually too, as like one of the positive impacts of the Alaska dividend is that because people file for that every year, then their records are actually more accurate. So like they know where people are, they know how to get people money. And so the systems actually just work better there because everything's more up to date. So that's another benefit of this too, is going from 15% of the population in the tax system to hopefully close to 100%. That should actually make a lot of other things work better too. And I should also add another detail. Again, there are a few details so far, but one of them appears to be that it will be going to all residents. So defined as those who live there 6 months of the year. So this is like even expats, so like people from the US who are living there, theoretically could get it, but also like part of the like if you're an expat, you actually have to like have an income like that's over a certain limit, which is above the threshold. So uh, it's unexpected that expats would actually be getting anything because they already have to have higher income than that threshold. But it's interesting that they're actually just straight up looking at what is your income. They don't care if you are an immigrant or a natural born citizen or any of that stuff. It's just saying what is your income and have you lived here for 6 months over the past year, and if yes, then we will get you money to reduce your poverty. So it's very much like basic income thinking, and it's also per person too. So again, this is not like a per household kind of thing where we're like, oh, I wish it was per person. This is getting that right too. Like this is a straight up basic income guarantee per person. So that's also very exciting as well.
That's awesome. Like the whole household mindset is like we're very tiresome of making the case of like why that's a problem. Like a person is a person, a household is run by one of the people. I want to go back a little to the real-time nature of it too. Like if we think about a disaster situation, either big like COVID, we all remember it took like months to figure out how we're gonna get the checks. We had to make sure like Donald's signature was on it before we could see it. And there's all the different ways you could get it. Like you got to get it in the mail, you get direct deposit, you got whatever. In the situation like that, if we're all set up for UBI delivery, then that decision can be overnight. Like, oh, we're gonna do a lockdown. Well, everyone gets $2,000 today, and we're all gonna go inside for a week or something.
Yeah.
If that's the choice we're making, we can do it much better, and we can not make people suffer. Like with a disaster, if you're in a situation where shit's hitting the fan, and you're about to lose your house or something, it doesn't really help to be able to declare that on your taxes in 9 months so much, or 11 months or 5 months. It's like you're homeless, and it's expensive to be poor, and it's hard to file your taxes, and you're really screwed. Like your whole life has taken a major detour because you had to wait for an after the fact intervention, rather than like as soon as this happens, I've got the support to figure my stuff out, and yeah, they'll tax me back, like what they should tax me back, but I'm not left in the lurch. So in like disaster aid, all kinds of stuff, like the way we want to use commingle maybe for disaster aid and get money to people really fast is impossible after the fact if we're like looking at people's tax forms later. So the other thing is, I wanted to mention just one of the things Scott said was about like they're gonna reduce the poverty of all of these people in Thailand. And the one thing I always like to add in as food for thought too is what's become far more important to me in my thinking about basic income than like reducing poverty is huge and historically transformational, but I think enhancing agency is even bigger. So not only will they reduce the poverty of their population, but they'll also reduce the productivity and the innovation and the creativity and the bandwidth and the health of their population. So I would imagine this sort of thing being at a like 40% of the population scale, they'll be able to measure major macroeconomic effects, especially if this becomes. Is this going to be, Scott, like an ongoing thing or one-time thing, or? Yeah.
No, they're straight up implementing this as like a major tax reform. Like this is big. Yeah, this is big news. This is like they're really.
Did
they're
Thailand
really going
win?
big.
Are they like
are they the horse that got to the end of the race?
Yeah.
Well, so they may be.
They haven't done it quite yet.
You know, like we would still argue, like, okay, well, they didn't win the universal basic income race. You know, like they won the basic income guarantee race, but there's still the UBI race to happen. But that's still a big deal. Yeah.
No, I mean, this is amazing. Like if they do it well enough that it really works kind of like a UBI, my long-term theory is like it's going to work so well that it'll just stick there forever. It'll be political suicide to get rid of it, and then it'll spread the globe eventually. So this is the moment, you know, the turning point in history.
It's like for the most part, like the current government is totally gung ho on this, and it's a big deal, and they're going to do it. But you know, politics are politics, and you know, like an election will happen like before then. So it's possible that the people, like maybe there'll be lots of fear mongering, maybe there'll be like some major campaigns against this, and they'll like freak people out, and the people will be like, oh, we can't do this.
Right.
So you know, it's not set in stone yet. Fingers crossed that they'll actually do this as they say and plan to do this, and we'll learn more details as we go. And hopefully the details that we do know continue, like it is actually per person, and you know, the threshold's good, and you know, the amount. And it'd be great, I think, too, if the phase out rate were smaller, you know, 50%, like 40%, 30%, 20%, I think would be much preferable. But you know, we'll see. I haven't seen anything about that yet. I do want to point out too that another part of this tax reform is that they'll be boosting their value-added tax. And so this part in this article says that in addition to the negative income tax, the finance ministry also plans to raise the VAT from a current rate of 7%. It's been there for 20 years. And they mentioned that it reflect the new current consumption patterns of Thai consumers, and noted that several neighboring countries had already raised their VAT. For example, Indonesia now collects VAT at 12%. So maybe that they'll be raising it to 12%, but we don't know what. It's just that they plan to raise it. And it mentions that, you know, to raise VAT is to collect taxes from those who consume a lot of goods, most of whom are higher income earners. The more they consume, the more they should pay in tax. And so, like with a value-added tax too, that's a way of taxing the tourist industry. You know, like people come in from all over the world, and you know, they buy a lot of stuff, and you know, they're not going to be getting the negative income tax because they're just tourists, but they will have more funds. And it doesn't say that the VAT is actually meant to fund the negative income tax. So I don't know, because it says here, you know, next that the increased VAT will be allocated to developing infrastructure projects such as mass transit, education, and public health. So it looks like the VAT isn't for the negative income tax, but maybe it ends up, you know, kind of will be doing that. I think they just don't really know. You know, they don't know how much more income tax will be brought in by bringing the entire population into the tax system. So there's just a lot of unknowns, even and guesswork as to what the requirement will be for additional taxes for that.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what you were saying a little before too, with the politics of the situation, like we did see that with the CTC, which was like arguably, a basic income for kids, where one of the things when I say doing it right or doing it so that it has a chance to last is doing some sort of long-term guaranteed implementation so people have a chance to really understand how it's working. Like one of the things when I think about how I would do it in the US, if we could, or anywhere, is like codify it in the Bill of Rights. So it takes like, supermajority to get rid of it. Like not the sort of thing that can be used as a political football, and like peg it to some moving number is another important one too, right? If it's like the fight for 15 minimum wage and we're just like having this fight endlessly, that sucks. If it's pegged to some percentage of GDP or average income, then it has long-term legs and doesn't become increasingly ineffective over time. So there's a lot of ways to potentially screw it up, but I feel like if it's designed to last long enough and grow well enough to let people really get to know it over the course of like a couple administrations, then that's ideal.
Yeah, I should mention too that the definition of their poverty line right now is about 36,000 baht. And again, if their threshold that they're drawing is 60,000 and the phase out rate is 50%, then 30,000 would be the maximum that people could get. And so there is that slight gap between 6,000 and 30,000. So the very very poorest people would not be lifted out of poverty. Their poverty would be greatly decreased, but they wouldn't be lifted out of it based on those numbers. So this is not like a poverty eliminating basic income guarantee, but it's close. So the way of thinking about that here in the US is like if we did something similar, and right now our poverty line is around $1,300 per month. So it would be I don't have to do the math on that, but it's probably like around $1,000, $1,100 or something per month would be the difference. So again, like if you had a small income, you're lifted out of poverty, but if you have zero income, you're still going to be just slightly below the poverty line. But that's still like that's a nice size if that's what they go with.
Yeah. Danny in the chat saying sup Scott makes me want to acknowledge one elephant in the room, which is that you sound like you sound a little bit like Stevie Nicks, or like you've been smoking a lot. Let's just address this real quick, because are you dying? What's going on?
No, sorry. No, I just got sick this last weekend. So
right.
Yeah, just getting over that.
Yeah. So hey Danny.
Next up, Conrad, you want to tell us about your recent adventure? You did some international travel recently.
Yeah, turns out I am not a good international traveler, but it was a fun trip. Like I screwed up a lot of things. Apparently, for those who don't know, if you're going to go to Brazil from America, Australia, or Canada, now a visa is required. I had gotten like a passport, made sure it was new enough, and had my vaccines and everything, but I just didn't know. And I learned at the gate, and I lost a couple days. So, oops. And I had plenty of other misadventures because I'm not very much of a world traveler. I'll get there. But
despite what we all might think.
I was really excited. It was my first time ever going. Like for a lot of years, I've seen Scott or other people go to this global. So the BN conference in Brazil, Basic Income Earth Network, is this global community, and it's sort of run by a quite academic thing, but it's and they sort of are the keepers of the definition of UBI. They're the ones who introduced me to a lot of people, and during the research phases for Bootstraps, and like they're the ones that kind of carry the torch and place in my heart when like I feel like the US movement has moved away from what I think of as UBI in a lot of ways. So I was super excited, not only to go to the Southern Hemisphere for the first time and see the world, but to like meet these people finally. And people from all over the world, like Taiwan, Poland, like they were duking it out for who's going to host the thing in 2027. Next year, it's going to be in Philly. Actually, next July-ish, I think. It's going to be crazy because the World Cup, then the big conference in the U.S., and then Philly, also the BN conference in the U.S. The last two are both happening in Philly, like back to back to back. So there's going to be a shitload of Brazilians in the U.S. because it's the World Cup, and there's going to be a lot of international UBI attention. Speaking of which, I met a couple of people. It was very gratifying. We had some people who were fans of the show, like remember our episodes better than us. I wanted to shout out to Mia and Emma from Australia. If you watch this, thanks. And
hi Mia, hi Emma.
Emma especially was like, you know, I think she was tolerant of Mia's color commentary and Josh, but she's like she wanted to express like just how valuable she finds it, even from the other side of the planet, that like all the time you put into gathering all this information for everybody, Scott. So yeah, thanks for following it, Emma, and everyone else who is in that situation. I know we have a few fans like that. The other thing I was really excited about with this trip is, after many, many years of scrambling to fundraise for our projects, being like so self-focused and being turned down by all kinds of people, like 8 years of this, there's now certain things popping up in the movement that I can point some of these potential funders toward, who it's like, oh, and they're opening up to it. Like, so I've been connecting the people who told me that they're interested in the Amazon rainforest. And I've been saying for years, like, you should do basic income in the Amazon rainforest. Now there's an organization, a group of organizations in the Cash for Conservation movement who is actively doing this. Equal Right, Cool Earth, Give Directly. They're pushing and setting up these programs like in the Amazon and Africa, like Colombia, Peru, Rwanda, where they're actually pushing to do this in a pretty radical way. And the people that I reached out to who weren't like sort of ready for this 5 years ago are taking these meetings and getting excited. So I got to, as like a perpetually selfish fundraiser, do the thing that I wished other people would do for us for all these years, which is like, you care about this, they're doing this, come together. And I'm like watching it work, and it feels magical, you know? So I felt like a successful global citizen in that way, in like being able to just kind of connect people, which, you know, kind of coming from nowhere is a pretty special feeling. So I already feel like our work is starting to have tangible impacts, even if it's just connecting, you know, money with projects that aren't us. So that's exciting. I guess the last thing I want to call out with it is well, I'm really behind on everything. So anyone in the Commingle crowdfund community who's waiting for an update, the monthly update, I'm going to get to it. We're doing a lot of focus on trying to raise money in a crunch right now for several reasons. So that's taking my attention. But I want to get the U.S. community and the global community excited for Philly next year. So Philadelphia in July. In an ideal world, we will have premiered at some awesome festival. We will have Commingle up and running, at least in a beta, in a pilot mode, and we're gonna take the movement by storm with like these new tools for everybody. So anyone who's considering going to Philly next year to the big conference and the BN conference, I encourage you to like block some time out in July for that. That's gonna be good.
Yeah, like this is the very first time that the international, like, you know, global basic income conference that's been going on for decades will be in the US. You know, like, surprise, surprise, it's never been in the US before. And there's a different flavor, you know, like there's always been a smaller US big conference, very academic. And, but this is from people from all over the world. From in the basic income movement will be coming to the US. And so if you're there, like you get to meet everybody, including like, you know, people call me the godfather of basic income, but I'm not. The godfathers of basic income are there. That's Philippe
Guy Standing, Philippe Van Parijs. I loved meeting Guy and just I just annoyed him for days. He's so lovely and brilliant, but I would make puns with his name because you have to. I'd be like, can you clap after our screening so I can say I got a standing ovation? He's like, oh God, stop it. And it was surprising for such a group of hardcore, decades long academics on the issue. They're pretty wild, going out and drinking every night and the camaraderie. I felt reinvigorated in a really special way.
Yeah, they're really fun.
To be plugged into that community. So it is a really good time.
I guess we can move on from the basic income conference stuff, unless you wanted to talk a little bit more about that. But
I think that's it. Right. I just want to say, if we're rolling out a lot of fundraising efforts, sort of on the down low, but we're prepping some stuff that'll be more public. But if we have people who are ready to talk radical stuff with us, now is the time when it would help a lot in making sure we can do some big work in 2026 and not have to stretch it out to 2027. So yeah, reach out, go to itsafoundation.org and reach out to us.
So the next thing, this is a fun thing. This is falls into another category. I feel that we need our own little section, or regular segment of fun stuff like this. And so a new game was just released today called Hollow Knight Silksong. And this is the sequel to Hollow Knight, and this has been in development for 7 years. And the reason I just wanted to discuss this for a bit is just because it's another example of remember when we talked about Clair Obscur Expedition 33 when that came out recently, and that has a work of just passion as a passion project that was made possible by COVID, and those people just focused on something that they really wanted to do, and they created this amazing game. So this is another thing like that, where this was only possible because it was a very small development team, and they sold it's 15 million copies of this game has been sold now, from a team of 3 people. They just created it themselves, the original, and it's just so popular that it's been selling well this entire time. And so I don't know what their incomes from this are, but if you look at the game is $15, and the Steam platform takes a 30% cut, and it works out maybe they're each getting around 300,000 a year, maybe 200,000 after taxes or something. But that's passive income, and because of that, they've been able just to focus on this. And it's funny if you listen to them talk about this game, it's not like they ever had any problems. It's not like they ran into issues over the past 7 years. They just spent 7 years on it because they loved working on it. It's not, they just wanted it to be amazing, and they also just had a great time making it. So just wanted to show this is the kind of game, to me, this is the kind of project that is possible thanks to a basic income floor, not having to worry about money.
And it took I just want to reiterate, it took 7 years of trust and faith in what these people thought was a good idea to reap the massive GDP benefits of having a big success, right? If people were go get a job and sustain yourself in the interim because you're obviously a useless person, then they wouldn't have been able to do the thing, and then we wouldn't benefit from it today. There's tremendous that's why I say more important to me than even reducing poverty is unleashing people's true potential, because this is the kind of thing people with a lot of passion get to do when we get out of the way.
Yeah, it's funny to think about from that way too. Of imagine if everyone got $200,000 a year, which is a crazy amount of basic income, and what do? Well, you do something like this, but also you don't do like if you're like measuring employment, then what you're saying, oh, they haven't done anything for 7 years. Like so it's this is a result of 7 years of passion.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's like they just hand drew my bug down.
I guess I don't know the story of the original one, but it does look a lot like the first version. Like just kind of with some nice upgrades.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were kind of like living off of the proceeds of the first one, means they just had some time to refine it and make it great. But I'm not sure. It was a pretty indie game to begin with, right?
Oh yeah, no, it was just a couple people.
2 people, yeah.
And it's still that for this one too. It was 3 people is the core team, and then they brought in like a little bit of help of like up to like 5 people on certain times just to get a little bit extra help. But so yeah, like maximum team of 5 people, but mostly 3. And so yeah, that just came out today.
Cool.
If you like, you can like find a bunch of streamers, playing it for the first time today. Another cool thing about it too is they didn't even release it to like reviewers first. They just wanted, their fans to be able to play it first. So like all these like reviewers and stuff were just like, God damn it, we don't get to play it early. And so everyone's playing it like today. And from what I can see so far, people are just, loving it, and like how like refined everything is. That's the kind of stuff, I really look forward to seeing more of.
Yeah, the kind of stuff that's like doesn't make a lot of business sense maybe for like a whatever they call it, AAA, to like invest time and money in because they want like the safe bet, like just like Hollywood or whatever. I see that extending into art, music, whatever, where it's like reintroducing. I'll do it in a music context. I remember seeing an interview with Sting where he's lamenting where like back in the heyday of rock and roll and stuff, they were given a lot, like when they got signed or whatever, they were given a lot of room to play and experiment and make these like magical albums, and they weren't being pressured to like pump shit out like 1 or 2 hit songs with a bunch of filler. Like they were creating masterpieces of albums and like really cool songs. And he's like, you can't do that anymore. No one will pay for it. And so we've lost so much musically. But if people can just, have some, especially since it's like cheaper, all this kinds of equipment now, like indie filmmakers and playwrights and like community theater and musicians and other types of artists can just like take their time to really craft stuff. I think, like people say we'll get a lot of shitty art. Of course, we're all going to be like, oh, I can do more art, and I kind of suck.
We already have that. Yeah,
you're going to see some shitty art, but you're also going to see some people like blow our fucking minds with like the kind of stuff we don't get to see now, right? The whole landscape is like the stuff that gets out broadly is the stuff that basically we can convince some very rich companies and people to make happen rather than the stuff that the artists themselves would make if they had the opportunity.
So a along these lines too, here's another like fun thing. Again, file it away and what we'd see more of with basic income. Very weird, but also just like super fun. So here's what it is. This is what someone did.
花4个月时间给猫咪小镇做的地铁站和地铁，今天终于通车了。一会儿不错将带领他的猫猫们成为首批乘客。大家好，我是邢志磊。自打我2年前做了猫房子起，就有很多朋友给我留言，希望我能给猫猫们再做个地铁。但是经过我几次认真考虑后，发现有2处难题一直没有想明白怎么解决。一个是地铁到站后，地铁门和站台门怎么同步同步，另外就是怎么做一台可以运转的踏步电梯。直到今年上半年，我决定不想了，先做，遇到困难再想办法。果然，一个困难接一个困难。
But who's gonna clean
我
my
还好，我的
toilet?
信心够坚定。在一次次失败后，最终耗时
Like, it's just
4个月，
amazing what
终于
people
完工了。
will do when
以
they
前
have like
我们
the
每做
time
好一
and
个新场景，
resources
到
to
了打
do
扫
it.
卫生环节，总会集体投
It feels like the next step in
因为
humanity. Like, chill out and have fun.
Right, just coming up with all sorts
是
of
真
fun
头
stuff.
痛啊！但是这次给地铁站打扫卫生就轻松多了，因为我们有一台机器人。刚才只是开个玩笑，专业的事交给专业的机器人去干。这次地铁站的卫生是由科沃斯 X11 Pro 来搞定的，它的飓风拔尘和活水洗涤功能一干一湿，可以解决地铁站
I
内
love
的
not
诸
being
多
able to
问题。一
understand
般的
what
小
they're
台阶
saying. Makes it like even
Yeah.
more random.
最吸引我的是，它居然把手机的快充
It's nice that it has its own
做到了
robotic
X11
vacuum too.
基站能在地保
You know,
回
it's
吸的
automated.
间隙给它充8%到10%的电，让机器一直保持有电量，这就相当于机器有了无限续航。
Well, yeah, and I can see people
马上就要进站了，我们
being
一
like,
起
we
去
can't have
约一下
everyone doing this. We'll never produce anything. It's like, we're not going to have a society of people that want to make cat subways. Like, there's going to be 1 or 2.
Right.
And we're going to love it.
Yeah.
And then other people are going to be like, you know what? I want to be a doctor, you know, because I want to help people. Like, that's not going to stop happening.
Yeah, we'll have all sorts of new fun stuff that we can't even imagine.
Like, my dad still would have been an engineer because that's what he is, you know, like all of these things will still happen. You know?
Right, maybe we'll just get a
这
couple
次也
more
很
cat
感谢科沃
engineers.
斯
That's all.
X11 Pro 对本期视频的大力支持。这段时间的使用体验
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah, I thought that
we
was
need
very
we do
fun.
need like a name for this little segment. Like what it's just like the stuff people will do. Like there's a whole argument that like, well, if we are not working and trying to make a living, what are we going to do with our time? It's like we will find something to do. Like people will come up with some pretty cool stuff to fill in that time there.
Yeah. Yeah, if any listeners come up with any creative names for this segment, please let us know.
The other thing is like people get hyper focused on this, like, oh my God, we can't have everyone do this. We've got 8 billion people on this planet. Like we
Yeah.
can do multiple things at once. And I do feel like in case my dad ever watches this, I need to retract that statement where I said he's just an engineer. That's pretty callous and minimizing. I think he actually is a great engineer, but he originally he was an English major and he wanted to be a writer or a teacher or something. And the reality of like, I got some kids on the way, or at least one at that time, is like, I'm going to go back to school for engineering so I can make sure I make enough money to. So my dad could have been, you know, a writer, and maybe that's what he would have been. And then other people would be engineers. Like when I was starting out my little semi career as an engineer, like my short term thing, one of the things I lamented is every time I would go in for an interview, it was very clear that, or when I got the job and saw who I was working with, it's like, oh, I'm competing with 10 times as many people than actually want this job. Like, and the management isn't always great at deciding. Like I was a good engineer, but it took me a really long time to get a job. And I was then working with like a mishmash of good engineers and people coasting through like with their safe job, where I like this idea of only the people who really want the job competing for it and then being able to work at will. Like this is sort of a conservative argument. Like if everyone's going to be okay, then we don't have to punt the responsibility of being a last source of security onto companies. Like we can fire someone who isn't doing the job right, and not be like, oh, but we're the only way they get their health care, and we're the only way they get their income, so they're totally screwed if we fire them, so it's our fault. That should be the government and Social Security net's job. And so then all of a sudden, all of these corporations and businesses like can focus on their more limited goal of providing the best service they can, and then not like being the last line of defense for society.
Yeah, and along those same lines, like everybody knows who works in some office environment, some work environment, whatever. Like you've got people that you know who hate their jobs and are just like horrible in that, you know, they make the work environment worse. You really just don't want them there, and the only reason they're there is because they need the money. So like this fear of like, oh, people will stop working, like there actually are some people that you want to not work in specific jobs, and we'd all be better off if they chose to not work at all or to choose something else that better suits them.
Well, and the really dark version of that is like this whole bullshit jobs thing where like
Yeah.
all of the talent that really like would have wanted to like teach kids or like whatever, like so many of our best and brightest, or like the most passionate, whatever, ambitious minds are working for Wall Street, learning how to extract money from the economy and like trick people out of their, you know, mortgages. And so many are like focusing on like marketing to see how many people they can get to click on a damn ad, right? And these people could be doing way more beneficial and personally fulfilling things for the world. But we lose that talent to the need for safety and accumulation because we have a society that allows people to fall to zero. We have this scarcity reality.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll be like even more radical about this, that I think that most organizations have about like 5 people who are doing all the work, and everybody else is kind of along for the ride and are just like waiting to be told what to do. And if nobody tells them, they'll happily sit there and just watch. Like I do think that I mean, I hear that's like from law firms, even like all like places that you would expect are like everybody's like a real, you know, hardcore go-getter. But like I've been in ad agencies where that's the case, where it's like, yeah, and usually it's like the person that runs the agency does very little work, but there's a couple people down there like in the trenches that are like just trying to keep things moving just because that's how they are, not because they need the money or want the money. It's just they're just the workers, and everybody else is like, okay, it looks like they're doing it, so I can like you know, go on vacation.
Yeah. I've come up with a term recently for this sort of sentiment that kind of feels like it fits me, especially in my darker times. Like I look around and I just don't like a lot of people, but I love humanity and I believe in humanity and I believe everyone should be empowered. But also there's a lot of people who are like, God. And part of it is of these, not the 5 or whatever that are like really pushing things along, how many are coasting, who in another position would really be pushing things along, are really impassioned about what they're doing in their communities or their other jobs. But also like, sometimes I like when I was feeling like, am I a misanthrope? Do I hate people? It's like, no, I love people. I love humanity. I believe in their potential, but maybe I'm a dislike-anthrope, like at least in their current iterations of like surviving in a scarcity world and being mean to each other. Like there's days and times where I feel like I dislike most people. Like I believe in them and I love them and I want to invest in them. Mm-hmm. But so
maybe a nicer way to look at it is that the people that are just sitting around not doing their jobs are the ones that are like in the wrong job. They just didn't have the chance to be put into the job that they really wish they had. So,
what it makes me think of is
that's true, but I think
what it makes me think of is hurt people, you know? So like, and if there are people being hurt by their jobs or people being hurt by, you know, other people, abusive situations, whatever. But like it's okay to not like people in the current incarnation of what's going on, and at the same time as understanding that, well, they're assholes because like people are assholes to them and they're in situations that create assholes.
Right. And I don't think
let's make things better.
We've talked about this before too. Will people be nicer? And I don't think like there'll still be people like rub you the wrong way or whatever, or just aren't on your wavelength or mean or whatever. But I feel like a lot more people will be
Yeah.
likable, like myself included. Like when I'm stressed the hell out, like I'm not that fun to be around. You know, I know it. So
Yeah,
I think
just like
that's
we
true for
know.
everybody.
Yeah, like most relationships, what is it like? The majority of fights are money related, and so it's not like all fights are going to end with a basic income, but we will definitely have fewer of them. And yeah, people get into fights. It's not because they're just dickheads, but maybe it's just because they're just stressed out, and then that's the way that they act out.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
the dickhead emerges from the circumstances to a large degree. It's not just like
yeah,
everyone's inherent nature to have these negative personality traits. Like at some point, we were all little babies who didn't even know who we were, and maybe we had tendencies or whatever, but we get pushed in a direction by the experiences over our lifetime and the experiences during the day. Like good news or bad news can totally turn you into, a gracious individual or a total maniacal asshole, like over the span of 5 minutes. We all know
yeah.
this is true. So if we turn down the
dick dial.
the fire hose of like of financial stress by like a significant degree, then I think all of that, how treating each other like shit, goes down by a significant degree, and relaxing ourselves and getting along better goes down by a significant degree.
Yeah.
At the very least, we'll have to find something besides money to fight over.
Yeah,
And I welcome that problem.
money is a tired fight.
We will be fighting over like what color to paint the subway station for our cats, right? Like that's where we'll have the big argument.
Yeah. It's like competition. How there's one way of countries competing is war, and another way of countries competing is the Olympics. And so, I certainly prefer the Olympics to war. And it's not like we don't have any competition if we get rid of all war. Like we'll always have stuff to compete over.
Yeah, who has the most pleasant society? There's one that makes me think of one of the like minute-long snippets or whatever you shared recently from our last episode. Was talking about how on average in America we spend 4 hours a day thinking about money.
Yeah.
And one of the comments was sort of like oh yeah, why don't we just not ever think about money or plan everything and just not? And it's like, that's a pretty big disingenuous leap. It's like, maybe we could think about money
a little less,
2 hours a day, like, is that enough to sort of budget for the day? Or like, I feel like I could budget for the day and like, with like an hour a week, and the rest of the 4 hours a day, like I'm a weird case. I already said, like, because all I think about is like monetary systems or whatever. But instead of like the other, I don't know, whatever it is, 4 times 28, so 27 and a half hours of a week are not planning and thinking and being strategic and smart. It's stressing and being mean to people and like getting in a fight with your wife and yelling at your kids, accidentally and having to apologize, and it's all fueled by this money stress. Yeah, we should think about our budgeting and our finances and everything and be smart about it, but that doesn't take 4 hours a day. It doesn't take like essentially a full or almost full-time job, to just plan our finances. That should be easy, especially with current technology.
Yeah. The question is, like, if you talk to, like in that survey, it broke it down by demographics and stuff, and it showed that boomers were a little bit over 2 hours a day, so they were clearly the least. But it didn't break it out by like, how much does the top 1% spend on it? It's thinking about money, So I'm sure they certainly think about money, but like, are they thinking about it 4 hours a day, or are they just like they don't have to worry about it? Like they hire people to think about their money. They've got wealth managers at that level.
Right. And it didn't break it down to the amount of that thinking time that was like couched in optimism or couched in dread.
Yeah.
They're like, it's a very different type of thinking about money. And it wasn't quite specific about that, right? Like, so we were just speculating how much of it was couched in dread, but I feel like a lot of it for most people.
I think that's a fair assumption. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to cover, we've talked about this before, how Robert Reich has been talking about basic income a lot more. Like it's been in 3 blog posts over the last few months where he's mentioned that like basic income should be one of the things that Democrats are pushing.
Welcome back, Rob. Like he was on our radar in 2016, and he kind of like lost focus, but he's coming back.
So here's he just did this appearance on PBS NewsHour yesterday, and this is I'm just skipping to the end here where he's asked about like a policy prescription.
Is there a policy prescription for this that would help alleviate some of the job market challenges on the horizon?
Inevitably, I think that universal basic income is going to become more popular because the caring jobs of the future that are going to dominate the future, given AI's tendency to automate so many professional jobs, those caring jobs are not going to be paying all that much. They don't pay that much today. And so the notion of a universal basic income that is gaining ground in many countries and has shown some promise in the United States may actually be a major policy in the future.
In your new book coming up short, you are.
Good job.
He
Yeah.
wasn't wishy-washy or anything. He was very clear, like the Pope
Yeah.
on the second go around. He's like, universal basic income. Here's why. And it wasn't like among a laundry list of things.
Right.
It wasn't. Yeah. It's like should be top of mind. This one idea all by itself, which is it's such a relief to hear it expressed that way by people with a platform.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, even those of us who, of course, highly support UBI and talk about them all the time, I want other stuff too. But like when it comes to that question, when it comes to what is the policy prescription for the disruption by AI, well, it's UBI. That is the direct answer. And you don't have to couch it anything else, even though other stuff is important too. But like UBI is a thing that people aren't talking about enough. And it's not considered like, the most realistic policy. And they're trying to come up with other things and, more playing around the edges. So that is the thing to push. And it's great to see him push it.
And I don't think we should just imagine that this is emerging on its own. I think this is what we've been fighting for. Like we talk a lot about how politicians don't lead, they follow. And they don't step on ground that isn't like safe, right? So like when I was stressing out about how Bernie would never talk about UBI back in 2016 and 2020, it's because he didn't want to get discredited in general when he's made so much traction on healthcare. Maybe that's the reason. And it's like it really is on us, the public, to make it like obviously we have an interest in this idea and we're demanding it, and the more you bring it up, the more like positive attention you get. So it's not like Reich, for example, who always has been a supporter, but I think when he sort of drifted from the topic for a while is because the demand didn't seem there. He wasn't getting the positive reinforcement feedback. And I would imagine now he is a lot more. And so he's like, I'm going to talk about this more. Like I've always believed in it, but it wasn't something I felt like I could get away with talking about a lot without seeming fringy. So I would say the UBI movement deserves a ton of credit for not giving up and keeping this idea on the table as things changed.
Yeah, everyone out there who makes a point of sharing stuff about UBI, like you're helping. So thank you. Especially if you're a listener and you're watching right now, clearly you're heavily involved, and like we need that. Like you're doing something.
You don't think we have casual watchers?
Just kind of breezing by, flipping through channels. Yeah. The part of what he said that kind of like that I'm hoping to address with Commingle is that he said like in the future, this is going to be something that we're going to need. Like everybody's kind of still looks at UBI as like futuristic, like forward thinking, like we will get there eventually. And like, I think that's why I'm getting so like antsy to like get something released that we can like actually play with. So we can at least say it's not the future. This is it maybe it looks futuristic because it's an app, and maybe because it's using technology. It's got some like, machine learning going on there. Like the future is right now that we need this sort of support. It's not like we like all the other technology that's moving us into what looks very futuristic with like, robots and computers that we can chat with, all that is here right now and is like currently operating on our, macro economy. So it's like how come the other part of the future that has to wait, right? Like, why are we sitting around?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to cover another mention of basic income, and I was kind of surprised by this one because we actually he had just said recently that I wasn't really going to talk about it anymore. So here's Sam Altman recently just like talking about it.
I don't know if something will get nationalized. I don't know if the world will like officially turn towards socialism, but I expect that like social support or redistribution or whatever you want to call it will increase over time as society gets richer and as sort of the technological landscape shifts. I don't know what way it's going to happen, and I expect in different countries it'll happen in different ways. Like, I think you'll see experimentation of like new kinds of sovereign wealth funds, new kinds of like universal basic income ideas, redistribution of AI compute. I don't know exactly what, but I suspect we'll see a lot of experimentation in society here. I don't know if something will get.
So again, that's like, it's not him saying that the answer is UBI. He's really just kind of touching on it, just being like, you know, we may, like countries may do this, and he's not like picking sides. So that's unfortunate that he's not picking sides. Whereas like Robert Reich was saying, we are going to need this, like this.
It does seem like a softening though. Like,
right. It
I
does.
remember like a couple months ago, he's like, I'm not sure about UBI. Maybe it's universal basic compute. And he's still like plugging like universal basic, my product.
Right.
But now it's back in the list. He's like, maybe we're going to try all these things. He's bringing UBI like more directly back into it as like, it's one of these, right? So maybe he got some negative feedback for the big shift, or maybe he's thinking it's just broadened or whatever, but or shifted. But
yeah, I don't know.
I feel like we're kind of winning him back over too slowly. So yeah,
I just thought that was worth everyone seeing that he just did seem to slightly soften.
The one thing it is like lip service, where it is one of those like, these things should maybe happen or will maybe happen, not like I'm invested in making it happen. And he has been in the past, like he funded a whole basic income pilot. And so
right.
I'm curious how far he is from being reactivated into like, okay, I do think I need to like be part of helping try some stuff, rather than expressing that I think, you know, intellectually this could or should happen, you know.
There's a weird thing going on right now that I wonder if that's coloring his thinking, is that a lot of like, if there's economic disruption happening, we can sort of like point to Trump and the White House and saying, oh, that's why it's going on, right? Like there's sort of this little scapegoat now, which is, it clouds the issue of like, where is this like economic disruption coming from, and like who's responsible for taking it on. And so like, you know, the AI disruptors are kind of getting a free pass for the next few years, I think.
Yeah, and so along those lines, here's one of the former OpenAI researchers. This made some news recently, saying that a $10,000 per month UBI will be feasible with AI, and so this is Miles Brundage, former OpenAI researcher. And yeah, like I think that's a bit high. I think this is along the lines of, you know, Elon Musk talking about universal high income versus universal basic income. And it's, you know, I'm not saying that that's never possible. You know, I do think that once productivity rises enough, we can certainly have a pretty high UBI. But, you know, I think it only kind of confuses the issue, I think, when people are talking about huge numbers like this.
It's a form of a cop-out or like a punt. It's like, it's going to be so great at that time that we don't really have to think about it. And it's like, it's totally non-pragmatic, and it lets people, like, just like with the health techno-optimists that I like got me all excited like 10 years ago for nanobots to make me immortal. And it's like, where are we on that, guys? And like, are we any closer? Is it going to be the sort of thing that only 3 people can afford? And, you know, I'm really excited in the idea of being 25 years old effectively again. Similarly, it's like it's sort of like turn your brain off and don't think about this, because at some point it's inevitable we're going to get like $10,000 a month. But that's they clearly know that this isn't going to happen in the near term, and so they're clearly okay with like waiting for it to happen, which means they're like tacitly okay with the tens of millions of people who are like suffering today.
Well, the headline makes it seem like that he sees like so much money pouring, being unleashed by AI tools, that money will now just suddenly will have so much that we'll be able to give everybody $10,000. Like, where I don't see that really adding up. Like, nobody has quite cracked the code on how to monetize AI in general, and I don't think anybody should. Right. And most of the real like leaders behind it are like, yeah, no, we don't want to just turn this into another like ad supported network or cash grab. Right. Like, even though there is some of that going on, I think people do understand that would kind of fuck up the whole idea of it.
Yeah. There's a big difference between, this discussion of, we can do $10,000 a month at some point in the future with sufficient AI, versus like we were talking earlier about Thailand going, well, let's switch to negative income tax as like just a system that works better than we currently have. And so what's kind of frustrating is, why aren't these people also saying, let's just start immediately with some small amount, like we already need this now. We can go bigger over time, but like there's that gap that I'm seeing where these AI people tend to be just like in the future, instead of being like, we can or should be doing this now. Like, here's what he said: in the near term, I worry a lot about AI disrupting opportunities for people who desperately want work, but I think it's simultaneously true that humanity should eventually remove the obligation to work for a living, and that doing so is one of the strongest arguments for building AI and AGI in the first place. And he said, our current systems aren't prepared to address that reality right now. That is not something we're prepared for politically, culturally, or otherwise, and needs to be part of the policy conversation. A naive shift towards a post-work world risks civilizational stagnation. See WALL-E, and much more thought and debate about this is needed. So again, I think it's so again, this is the senior policy advisor, and he's talking about the danger of WALL-E being like in our future as a result of AI and AGI. And that ties into what we were talking about earlier, of like the realism of, no, really, people are going to come up with all sorts of cool stuff. Like, he's talking about WALL-E, and we're watching like cat subways being built, So like, I think it's that take of people like, oh, we won't do anything, like we'll just sit on our couches and have AI serve us, and we'll just like eat ourselves fat. And that's just, we won't do anything. We'll be super lazy, and we'll lose the ability to like do anything. Like, no, that WALL-E future is entirely unrealistic. It's not how people work. It was a great movie. I enjoyed it. But the people who fear that as being like the realistic future is, I think, just nonsense. Like, that is not a realistic future with basic income.
And for those who just tuned in, or if this is a short clip, like when Scott said building cat subways, it sounds like the kind of thing someone would throw off as like, what a waste of time. But as we showed earlier in this episode, if you go back, the cat subway is awesome. Like, we want that. We want the cat subways.
Right. Big on the cat subways. Okay. So there was some really good evidence recently that I wanted to cover. This was a big thing that came out of Mexico. And, they did a universal, essentially like a basic income for seniors. It was a universal policy. So everyone over 65 gets this money, and it's lifted over 13 million people out of poverty since it was introduced. They introduced it like 6 years ago, and like, it's just, this has like really happened. It's a bi-monthly transfer, which is kind of interesting. It's not every month, but they just found that it has like that nice kind of balance where it's a small amount, but it feels bigger if it's every 2 months. so people have a little bit more flexibility for using it for like larger purchases versus smaller basic stuff. It works out to about $330 every 2 months, 6,200 pesos, and yeah, fully universal. And so, some people are complaining about it, being like, "Oh, this shouldn't be fully universal." But the reason that it's so effective is because it is universal. And I love how, like one of the quotes from this. Let's see, one of them is, there's never been a single 6-year term in which poverty has been reduced or decreased so significantly. This is a watershed moment for the Mexican economy. They also tripled their minimum wage. So for people fearing that that's something that could like leave people worse off, and hurt the economy, that didn't happen. The universal cash transfer system, which replaced a well-regarded conditional system for the poorest fifth of households, requiring children to go to school and families to attend health checkups, has received some criticism. That's the there are others, their poverty targeted thing. But in case of the pension system, everyone over 65 gets this. So there's no conditions on this. There's no like vaccines required. There's no like going to school required. Of course, you're over 65, but like this is unconditional, no work requirement, full universal. All you have to be is over 65. And I love how, this quote here towards the end, the big problem with the cash transfers is not that they're universal. The big problem is the Mexican government has not made an effort to make it truly universal. That is, to make it reach everyone. So like if they really wanted to reduce poverty, that's what they would do. Make it fully universal, not just over 65.
And if they keep that up, they're going to have to worry about like Americans crossing the border and taking advantage of their society. And I wonder how that wall's going to bite us in the ass if we finish it. It reminds me of the Day After Tomorrow. Remember that apocalypse climate movie where the
freezing one, right?
Yeah, where like all of the U.S. got buried under ice, and like all of our global South neighbors like took in all of our global North, countries and like bailed us out. And there was such a, I mean, it's just such like progressive porn. But that moment where the president, who had been like a hardliner Dick Cheney type, like basically goes on national television and he says, for so long we've taken advantage of all these people and assumed that we knew everything, and now they're the ones out of generosity are saving us. And it's like it's just it's just such it's like comeuppance porn. And then it's just like it's just fun to watch. And I don't know how realistic it is, but realistically, if that happened, we would like invade and say, your country is ours now, and like but yeah, we can dream.
Okay, so for the remainder of our time, I just wanted to cover this slew of anti-UBI stuff that's been coming out recently. And we've discussed some of it before. We discovered like the New York Times stuff where that was really just focused on babies' first years. And but since then there was there's a new Substack called The Argument that's interestingly clearly meant to get people to argue. And like their first, or one of their first pieces was about like, how disappointed I am with surprisingly disappointed the author was with cash, unconditional cash. Like that's not really going to help at all, or to the degree that people thought. And so like it comes off as being like evidence driven, like that's the danger and kind of annoyance of these things is they cite a few studies. They cite the baby's first years, they cite Sam Altman's pilot, and maybe they'll cite the Denver pilot too.
I saw one today that was like his handle's like No Opinion or something. Noah.
Oh, okay.
Opinion.
Yeah, he did something today.
And he wrote an article and said, I used to be in support of this, but it's disappointing. And he like listed those 3 things. Yeah. Those are the cherry picked things. And someone's like, you should talk to Scott and the UBI guy or whatever. And I was like, I did a post about like, they're never going to. Like influencers don't talk to well, maybe we talk to you, but not me. Like, there's like a level of platform where they won't they won't slum below their level of influence.
And they're being disingenuous too. Like Noah has never been into UBI, maybe he can say always slightly curious to see if the stuff will work. And, now that he's able to look at a couple pilots, um, and like frame them in a way where suddenly he's like, oh, well, I've lost interest in this. And so it's been weird to see this kind of I say traditional liberal wonk kind of person express disappointment in basic income pilots. And like one of the things, one of my takeaways from this too is that it's kind of a good sign. Like they're worried, I think, that it's re-entered the conversation. Thanks to AI, people are talking about this again, and they're hearing a lot about it, and they're saying we should do this, we should do this, and then you're seeing all these pilots, and like in general, I would say like the blue sky consensus is every single time a pilot comes out, they're like, these work all the time. Of course, it worked again. We should just do this. And so now these people in this position where they have to fight against that. And so then they have to take this, this liberal elite kind of academic stance of saying, oh no, like I'm not opposed to this ideologically. It's just I've looked at these numbers coming, I've got this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence.
And darn it.
So this is, it doesn't work. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. So we should do the stuff that we usually do.
Too bad. Which is working great. Yeah. And it's like, that's this is coming from the New York Times and stuff. And like, just like people, so we make all this progress over a lot of years, like getting the idea out there. And then all of a sudden one stupid article comes out and everyone and their mother and like is telling me about like, oh, that's too bad. I guess it doesn't work,
Yeah. You've got these elites coming out against it recently, like these wonky elites or whatever. And so there's been some good responses to this too. And I'm working on my own as well. It's going to be longer than I wish it would be, but I have to cover everything. Like you got to cover why these three pilots should be couched within a larger context, understanding why these pilots showed certain results and understanding them better. And
we've talked about all of them, right?
We've talked about this stuff before.
Like if you want the deep dives, it exists. If you want to have us talk about it for 45 minutes and tell you what they got right and wrong and what they missed. And yeah.
So one of the ones I suggest people read is Annie Lowrey's take. She's knowledgeable. She wrote a book about basic income, and her title for the article for The Atlantic is "Yes, Cash Transfers Work. Money Alleviates Poverty. It's not complicated." And this gets a little bit into this summary too. I just wanted to just read it because it covers even like what like this like anti-UBI argument is doing, what it's saying, and kind of more context. She says, in 2023, the U.S. produced $28 trillion worth of goods and services. The average family had a net worth of 193,000. Shares in American companies accounted for more than half of global market capitalization. Yet 1 in 8 Americans lived in poverty, as in 1 in 7 children. The best way to help those people is to give them money. Year in and year out, Social Security lifts more than 20 million Americans above the poverty line. Tax credits lift 6 million, and food stamps, housing subsidies, unemployment insurance, and supplemental security income payments lift another 2 million to 4 million each. Expanding these programs would move the poverty rate lower, experts have long argued. Providing families with much needed cash also tends to have a range of positive knock-on effects, such as keeping kids in school and improving health measures. But a new set of cash transfer programs has had lackluster results. Writing in the new publication, The Argument, Kelsey Piper notes that multiple large, high-quality, randomized studies are finding that guaranteed income transfers do not appear to produce sustained improvements in mental health, stress levels, physical health, child development outcomes, or employment. Given the sobering results, politicians and policymakers should hesitate before pumping funds into these safety net initiatives, she argues. If not, money will be wasted on things that don't work. Having a technocratic debate over how to spend the next marginal safety net dollar feels a touch absurd at the moment. Republicans are gutting the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and Medicaid to finance tax cuts for billionaires. Trump admin officials are sending masked thugs to disappear people off the streets when they are not busy texting war plans to my boss. American democracy is fading. Nobody is talking about instituting a universal basic income anytime soon. Still, policy design is important, and the analysis of these new studies seems to have convinced a number of Beltway wonks and denizens of econ Twitter that cash transfers might not be as good of an idea as we once thought. Yet the argument has tended to overinterpret a limited and novel body of evidence while ignoring decades of sterling research showing that cash, particularly when targeted to infants and children, is near unmatched as a salve for poverty and its horrible consequences. The new studies focus on programs that were launched over the past 8 years. Each worked in a similar way. Researchers found people interested in receiving unconditional cash payments, divided participants into a control group and a treatment group, dispersed the money, and studied the differences between the groups. The programs varied in the types of people they enrolled. Babies First Years targeted infants and mothers, the Denver Basic Income Project, the homeless, the Compton Pledge, low-income households, and the size and duration of transfers. The Open Research Unconditional Income Study offered $1,000 a month. Babies First Years, 1/3 that sum. The results were disappointing in some respects. Homeless people, new mothers, and low-income Americans all over the country received thousands of dollars, and it's practically invisible in the data, Piper writes in her summary. Denver's program did not lead to a material reduction in homelessness. Competence did not improve its participants' psychological well-being or alleviate certain measures of financial distress. The Open Research Initiative did not bolster health outcomes. Babies First Years did not advance child development or spur families to move to better neighborhoods. On so many important metrics, these people are statistically indistinguishable from those who did not receive this aid, quote, end quote. But people receiving aid were statistically distinguishable from those not receiving aid. They had more money to use on the things they needed or wanted. In the Open Research pilot, participants spent more on housing, transportation, and food. Mothers who got cash to the Babies First Years initiatives were less likely to be in poverty than those who did not. In other words, a famed anti-poverty measure reduced poverty. This intuitive finding is underplayed, perhaps because it is so intuitive. Cash transfers aren't new. No safety net policy has ever been as thoroughly examined over the course of decades. Last year alone, initiatives to send cash and cash-like substitutes to American families cut the overall poverty rate in half. Just a few years ago, a massive temporary federal cash transfer to parents slashed the poverty rate to a historic low of 5.2%. The rate rebounded after the program ended. You give people money, they have money. I just want to focus on this one sentence just for a bit before continuing on. No safety net policy has ever been as thoroughly examined over the course of decades. Like that's, yeah.
Sorry.
That's a funny pop-up.
So annoying.
That's the, so we just see over and over again, like it's crazy to me how we have to test just giving people cash without conditions over and 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 over again. And then you find like a couple that like aren't super impressive, and then suddenly it doesn't work. Yet how many studies of what we currently do have been done? Like none. We just do it. And like most recently, we covered this, I think in the last episode, when that new study came out that looked at housing vouchers. So they actually tested housing vouchers versus cash. It was the first time that had ever been done. You know, we just did that. And so then when the question was, okay, is this thing that we're doing, does that actually work better than cash? And it turned out, no, like cash works better. And so in all of these circumstances, like we don't actually know a lot of these things. So if we never actually tested it against cash, but for some reason, like cash is like this incredibly high bar of, you know, what is something that people can support, you know, like depending on the results. It's crazy.
People
yeah,
don't
she really gets at something. Yeah, she gets at something like that has always bothered me. Is like, if you want to reduce poverty, just giving money by definition is reducing poverty, right? Like what other, it's like now we need to change what we mean by poverty. We actually mean people that aren't doing so well, right? Like, so like moving that definition is the only way to like sidestep this very, very intuitive like solution here.
But let's look over this educational outcome or this weird outcome and
But
ignore
we didn't
the
mean
fact
poverty like
that
they
the-
don't have enough money. We meant poverty of soul. We meant poverty of their ability to raise children. We meant the poverty of their their brain
Moving the
size or
goalposts.
whatever. Right, yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
very
the
it's
brainwave
very
stuff.
compelling when they keep saying like these are 3 very rigorous trials and very scientific and blah blah blah, and it's like 3 out of 103, and they're cherry picking even parts of those trials and it's like, this is why. So we talk about bootstraps and commingle a lot on this, is like things we're working on, things that the It's a Foundation is supporting. But there's another project that It's a Foundation has been supporting that actually at the BN conference they unveiled like their next phase of prototype that's kind of ready to use to some degree, but it's called UBI Data, and this is being like led by people under the auspices of BN and stuff, the BN organization. And the idea is it accumulates all of the data from all of these pilots in one place, and eventually, hopefully, at some point, they can have these comparative analyses where it's a lot easier for people to go to a place and not see like a cherry picked, agenda laden like take, but to be able to be like, okay, did child educational outcomes, what did they do? What happened to poverty? What happened to crime? What happened to drug abuse? And to see it across like the 50 programs that measured for it,
Yeah, well, like one of the things I wonder if this will be an option in UBI Data. I hadn't thought of it until just now, but one of the things recently, that people are saying with these like negative pieces are, oh, it just didn't impact mental health, and so they're cherry picking 3 studies or something, and that didn't show like significant impacts on mental health across the entire treatment population, and completely ignoring the COVID pandemic, and of course everything that happened before and after that. And so I wonder, like, if one of the things you could do, first of all, like if you were to look at UBI data and just looked at, you're curious about mental health impacts, so you just click on mental health, and then you see, oh look, like the overwhelming majority of studies show that there are significant positive impacts on mental health. And then
Yeah.
what if actually you can subtract 2020 to 2022? Like you can subtract COVID time from this as a confounding variable. And just like, I'm interested in studies that happened before COVID and after COVID was over, just to see. And I bet you would see a much larger impact on mental health by taking out that confounding variable. So that'd be really cool to actually be able to kind of subtract COVID as part of this.
So maybe this is a good moment to just introduce them very briefly in terms of like, in case people want to support this work, like their data wonks or whatever, or globally, maybe open up the site and we can just kind of look at the broad strokes. Like it's still
Sure,
like
I'll go with
early
this.
prototype, but I'd love to see it have heat maps and interactive stuff. But they've got the experiments phase and the data explorers where you can really dive deep into all the different things the different programs measured. So click on experiments on the left. And then you got this map. They've got like, 40 different or 30 different things that they've already plugged into their database. And it's sort of time consuming because each of these pilots, they're like going through pretty rigorously for like what is academically usable. And so you can learn about the Chelsea Eats program, for example, and you can see all the parameters and how it was done. And here's the different outcomes that they measured for. And then you can kind of drill down and like, so right now it's a really good source to like look at all of these programs one at a time. So it's super useful for people like, you, Scott, and me, and like people like trying to do a research paper or whatever and compile stuff. And like the next level I'd like to see it get to is be super useful for everyday people to just like come and see the big map and say, did people drink more or less, and then see like, you know, like here's what happened across these 50 things, you know. But I'm so sick of trying to parry these cherry-picked things, especially with people that have platforms way bigger than us.
Yeah.
I would love for this website to become a hub that is trusted. Like, and they have a conservative, non-agenda mindset. They're trying to share all the good and the bad and just the real outcomes. They're super academic and credible. And they're transparent about everything on their website. So I would love for this to become like a universal source of data that instead of having these endless arguments, where most of the time I just refer people to you, Scott, because I don't have a catalog, like a encyclopedic knowledge of all this stuff. And just be like, go to UBI data and you dig around a little, like to whatever, to your heart's content. If you want a broad strokes or you want like the nitty gritty, it's there. So I'm like, we sort of sacrificed from our ability to keep our other projects going to make sure that this is coming too, because this is a part of a three-pronged approach to make sure we've got the storytelling, grassroots stuff, we've got the implementation, but also we've got like a really good accumulation of all the historical data. So yeah, this is something now that they've unveiled this this sort of more working version, and it'll keep improving. They are looking for funding. So if you want to fund them, you can earmark it straight through us or talk to them, reach out to BN. Like I'm really excited about this tool, like making a big dent in the movement. And it's not one of my projects. So I'm saying that just with my open heart and, you know, idealism.
Yeah, it's just it'll be great to have a centralized source. You know, there's already like a good. You can go to Stanford, Stanford's Basic Income Hub. You know, and they have a lot of info there. But like this is really collates it and will make it like more available to use more. Yeah, for like studying and just kind of learning more.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be very useful if you ever like. I just tried to do the like it looks like it's not set up yet, but you can kind of get an idea of where how it will work. So like you go to Data Explorer and you're curious of like, well, this anti-UBI piece said that there's no impact on health, you know. So then you should be able to click on outcome type health, and that will be able to show you oh, look, like there actually was, you know, positive impacts on health as like a normal thing, you know.
That might even be a temporary glitch because they were sprinting to unveil it like 4 days ago, and they said, "Oh, this little bit's not working." Like they were up late into the night before, so they're like, "This is still kind of coming together." The next phase is like to, you know, fix a couple of little glitches and then start putting in more and more like of the 100+ pilots that have happened, and then building out the features to make it more interactive, have these like top level comparative analyses. So the comparative analyses are difficult because a lot of these pilots didn't like get together and say, here's how we're going to measure this, and this is what we're going to ask, and we're going to use these same parameters. So there's like a really due diligence process of saying, what metrics can we faithfully look at like across a broad spectrum of things and say, like, we are effectively measuring, you know, graduation rates across these, like, and accounting for confounding factors or differences in how the pilots are run and stuff like that. So that is a longer process that they're building out and doing in this next phase. But this right now is already should be quite useful to a lot of people. Like people in the UBI movement at the conference were like, I am using this right now today for like my work, which is really cool to hear.
Yeah, and so everyone knows too, like there's the next phase of this, so there'll be a lot more info. So besides like the functionality, like improving a bit too, there'll be a lot more experiments added. You know, there's just hundreds of experiments to populate into this, but it takes time to actually go through each one and divide everything up and, you know, add stuff to the databases to update this. But yeah, once it gets going and it's fully populated, it's going to be just a super useful tool. So yeah, we at It's a Foundation are really excited to support this project. Okay. Just wanted to go back to the Atlantic piece just to cover the thing that so many people aren't covering. So again, like this one single thing is, I think right now, the way that you can tell the difference between someone who is being disingenuous in their anti-UBI piece versus someone who is being like genuine. And that's like even mentioning the pandemic as a potential like confounding variable. So of course, Annie gets into this, and in my piece, I'm explaining this too. But so here's what she says. I'm not surprised that the pilot's effects were limited, given when they were happening and how they were structured. The initiatives took place during and after the coronavirus pandemic, when Congress flooded families with stimulus checks, $600 a week bonuses to unemployment insurance payments, and a $3,600 per child allowance. If the no strings attached payments or an open research of babies' first years were the only cash transfers that low-income families were receiving, I imagine that they would have had a stronger impact. Cash transfers have more bang for the buck in developing countries than the super wealthy United States for a related reason. The more money people have, the more expensive it is to improve their situation. The more intense the material deprivation, the greater effect a single dollar has in alleviating it. More important, the pilots took place during an acute cost of living crisis. A giant surge in inflation combined with a simmering run-up in the price for childcare, healthcare, and housing. A few $100s a month was never going to secure a single mom an apartment in Denver or cover the cost of 9-to-5 daycare in Queens. Thus, it might have had a smaller impact on financial well-being than anticipated. I might explain why transfers did more for people living in low-cost Illinois and Texas than in the witheringly expensive Los Angeles metro area.
Especially because that single mom example, like that single mom with 4 kids got the same as a couple of parents with 1 kid.
Exactly. Yeah, that was a big part of it too, is if you're in the baby's first years, you got $333 per month, and maybe we're a household of 4, and that's not going to do much. If you are in the Sam Altman pilot, same thing. Like only one person out of a household got the money. So if you're a household of 4, $1,000 a month is potentially kind of small comparatively to what we would be talking about with a basic income.
Especially, and I hadn't thought about this.
Just one more thing. When it comes to like another example is Germany showed the Germany that basic income experiment that actually did show significant like mental health impacts and all this stuff that weren't found in the other pilots. Again, this is not mentioned in these anti-UBI pieces, but the design of that experiment was that it only went to single households. It was only to single adult households. So it didn't go to households of 2 or 3 or 4. It only went to single individuals because I wanted to look at what is like the pure impact of $1,000 per month on one person. And that's what it found. So again, like these experiments, like these people writing about this stuff are just, they're not being genuine, or they just don't know about this stuff. They haven't read it about it enough. And, it's hard to tell.
Like they're believing the last thing they read and like reiterating it. I want to emphasize one of the things you said that I hadn't caught before that really throws the baby's first years thing out of whack is like, I hadn't, like if the control group who wasn't getting the benefit of $333 across 4 kids or whatever was also people who are getting $600 a week from the unemployment boost.
Yeah.
And like several other things like the child tax credit, whatever. So it's like, so the control group is getting like $3,000 a month,
right,
and the treatment group is getting $3,300 a month.
Yeah.
Then why would it be that different?
Right.
It's the same. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up because I hadn't really connected the dots on that, like how much the data is completely sort of trashed by this overweighting. Like the control group's not a control group. So if you're measuring one against the other, it's like, well, we gave these people $1,000 and we gave these people 1,001, and the people with 1,001 didn't do better, so it doesn't work. You know?
That's why like any real scientist or anyone like knowledgeable about the way the scientific method works is you look at the actual paper and you look at the methods, you look in the context, you look at like, okay, what happened and when, and you want to try to, you don't want to draw conclusions that don't make sense to draw. And so the researchers themselves in these papers are saying that we think that, the pandemic served as a confounding variable. We think that, the stimulus payment served as a confounding variable. But then you have these people writing these pieces and they're just, either getting their conclusion from someone else or they read like the abstract or something and they're just going with it without like any understanding of the actual like environment that this took place in. And that's not good science. It's not accurate.
Or journalism. I think my favorite still is in the New York Times article that was like the height of disingenuity. Like they know better. That guy knew better. And you can tell because he interviewed two right-wing think tank like heads or whatever. So, and they were like, yeah, this clearly blows UBI out of the water. But even one of them, the American Enterprise guy, was like, I don't think we can I don't like UBI and I think it's stupid, but this doesn't disprove it. And he kind of like put that in as an after effect. Like I guess that guy's comment. Here's a person with a huge agenda against it and a lobbying budget against it, who's like, yeah, but this isn't the thing that says UBI failed. Like maybe he has other things that weren't presented, but he's like, jury's still out. Like my integrity is too high to like put my stamp on like this,
Yeah. So I suggest people read Annie Lowry's piece. Matt Bruenig also wrote a direct response to the argument piece on the argument. So like they have like a kind of debate section. Again, this like new publication is really about arguing. And so like they have people on payroll there who disagree with each other. And so Matt Bruenig actually did an official response piece to that where he like really called her out for the stuff. And, that's worth reading. He also did his own response separately from that. That's also good. It really just gets into like the math of poverty. Like his argument is look, like the biggest problem with poverty is actually just non-workers. And it's not because they're lazy. It's that, you've got seniors and you've got people with disabilities and you've got children. You've got people who aren't working because they can't work. And the only way to actually solve that is to like get the money. So, you need like strong safety nets in order to solve poverty. There's no other way to solve it. And when it comes to basic income, like you're missing the point if you're thinking that, oh, what we need to do is we need to target mothers right when they get pregnant, and we need to target mothers with young kids, and then we need to target people right after they become homeless, and we need to target, it's like all these people, these specific situations. And with universal basic income, the brilliance is saying, no, let's just make sure they have it, and they have it in advance of needing it. You make sure everybody gets it, they're covered, and you let taxes handle the clawback part of it. And you got that solved.
What's that old adage of like a penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure or whatever?
Yeah.
Like we got to target people after they become homeless. It's like that's super expensive.
Right.
If a little help keeps someone from being homeless, it's very valuable. So wait, Bruenig was like, who was he calling? He was supporting.
He obliterated Kelsey Piper, who wrote the anti-UBI. Oh, I'm so disappointed in his results stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple things in the comments. Mark seems excited about UBI data, and this person Jay is making a point about trauma. It says the main thing to study would be the effects of complex trauma. First 3 years of life are where a being is most vulnerable to complex trauma. If one is not trauma informed, the studies are pointless. And that's not like my area of expertise, but that's a thing that I hear something like that sometimes, where it's like, it reminds me of my complaints about, economists and a lot of the assumptions they make without knowing how people actually work and how the programs they support actually work in practice. It's like I'm sure there's a big basis of study for like the confounding factor of trauma. And if it's not understood or factored into, then the results we're getting are not reliable to some degree.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that we know from the Alaska dividend and the studies of it. So again, this is something with over 40 years of data. We know that that dividend reduces child abuse instances of interventions by Child Protective Services. So, like, I would say we know it reduces childhood trauma by reducing child abuse, and that's like long-term data, so that, again, that's the stuff that we should care about. It's not, if you look at the Baby's First Year study, we've talked about this before, where that may show interesting stuff years from now, but it's not like we should expect to see stuff right now at 4-year point. And if we've got Alaska data that goes 40 years, and we've got the Cherokee study, the dividend study, and that's showing 30 years worth of data, also showing huge impacts on adults, thanks to them receiving as kids. Like, that's what matters, is to look at these long-term studies outside of the pandemic. And it's just ridiculous for people to be judging basic income based on 3 pilots that they decided that they find disappointing during the pandemic. All right, that's it for this episode. Thank you all for watching, those who watched it live. Thank you all for watching this after the fact. Be sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment in the replies, and share this with others, and we will see you next time.
Thank you to the chat and the global supporters. Get excited for Philly next year.
All right, bye everybody.